Parents of Reddit, what lessons have to try to teach your kids that completely backfired? One of my 5-year-old twins was still having occasional accidents because she would get so caught up in playing doing something else that she just wouldn't go and would pee her pants. To combat this, we would give her a special prize of some variety when she wouldn't have an accident. This, in turn, caused her twin sister to start having accidents so she could get prizes for not having accidents. Even though she was fine on this front beforehand, we had to rethink our methods. Read a book that suggested you ask your kid what an appropriate punishment for misbehaving would be and then carry it out. 6-year son pinched his brother or something. So we asked what an appropriate punishment would be. He said pluck out my eyeballs and throw me over a cliff. We didn't follow through and stopped reading parenting books. My kids were begging for a pet. I don't want to take care of a pet. And I told them that they don't clean up after themselves without me hassling them. So why would they clean up after a pet without me hassling them? Told them if they could keep their room clean for 6 months without me telling them, they could get a pet. Youngest child proceeds to clean room. Then move clothes and a sleeping bag into the hallway and lock his door so his room can't get dirty as he sleeps in the hallway. Taught my now 16-year-old to always compliment people who insulted you. We were in a Burlington coat factory in Michigan when my mother was shopping for a bathing suit to take to Florida. There were few to choose from, so she was complaining. My kid was 4. A woman trying on pants and said something rude to my mom who was asking my opinion, and my daughter caught on that my mother was agitated. She squeezed out behind me and told the woman, "Your teeth are such a pretty yellow." Edit. Holy shit Reddit. 20k upvotes? I tell you, this is my most upvoted comment, but I doubt you'd care. My parents taught me to call 911 when I saw somebody doing something illegal. I called the cops on the Wiggles movie I was watching when I was 5 because a clown stole a cake. Luckily the 911 operator realized I was young. My story didn't make sense because it was a kids movie. Asked to talk to my mom before sending out cops. My dad tried to implement the whole "you must eat all the food on your plate" in our house during meals. My mom was never a fan of that lesson. But my dad was stubborn, so she just let it go. Well, one day my sibling had 2-3 bites of food left on their plate and was very clear that they were absolutely full and couldn't eat another bite. Dad wasn't having it and insisted they could not leave the table until all the food on their plate was gone. My sibling realized they weren't going to convince our dad that they were too full and finished the last few bites and then proceeded to vomit on the table and our dad. He stopped enforcing the rule after that. Not a parent, but as a child I noticed my sister was writing her name on the walls when she was drawing on them with crayon. Taking on the role of helpful big sister, I informed her if she was going to graffiti things she shouldn't write her name and give herself away. A few weeks later, she was carving patterns into the wooden desk in the study and carved my name into it instead. I taught them to stand up for what they believe in. All of a sudden they believed veggies were the devil and bedtime should be abolished. Saw a clip on local news about a toddler saving her mom's life by calling 911 when she collapsed. Figured it was a good idea to teach my toddler 911. Had to cops at my door 5 minutes later. When my son was about 3 or 4, he started to ask about how babies are born. I sat him down and gave him a very simple, age-appropriate explanation. He just looked at me, shook his head and said no very calmly but in a "I can't believe you think that's how it works" tone of voice, like I told him fake news. I was prepared for difficult questions and even prepared for the fact that he might ask me things that even I didn't know. But I was completely unprepared for him to just simply not believe me when I told him the truth. I just sat there not knowing what to do while he went back to playing Lego. When I was about 2 years old, my family was at a game in Angels Stadium. My mother went to the restroom and left me and my siblings with my dad. While he was busy watching, I wandered off. When they eventually found me, I was halfway around the stadium. A crowd had gathered to watch as a police officer held me out at arm's length while I screamed, "Call the police. This man is not my daddy," over and over again. My parents had taught me stranger danger, but forgot to teach me what police look like. Edit. Grammar. Not a parent. But I remember when I was 17. My parents thought I was lying about where I was when I was going out. Like I wanted to extend my curfew or something. Backstory. I am from a really small town, with really not a whole lot for teenagers to do. So my friends and I like to hang out at the Waffle House by this bar. Every Friday Saturday night. It never failed. Like 3 or 4 drunk people would get arrested and my friends and I like to watch. It was 10/10 entertainment. So one night, shit was going down one night at this particular Waffle House. So I called my parents and asked them if I could extend my curfew. I told them why and they didn't believe me. So they called the Waffle House where I was and asked for me. When the waitress, who knew me well, because I was there a lot, handed me the phone, my mom was like, "Comero, you really are at the Waffle House." I think that was the first time my mom realized that I was a loser. Needless to say, I got my curfew extension. Not a parent, but I work in a school. At my school we have a lot of kids with learning disabilities, more than in your average school, as we have a special program for it and get special funding. So one of the first lessons of the school year is everybody needs different things to learn. And if somebody is getting something different from you, it's because that's what they need to learn at school. You know, a kid-friendly way of explaining accommodations. Now, the usual accommodations we offer are special chairs, wiggle seats, extra breaks during the day, and extended testing time and tests taken in a quiet room. One kid, however, has decided to take the everyone learns differently lesson to heart and now talks in a fake British accent, "I live in America BTW," all day, because it helps him learn. Then all of the other kids started talking in fake accents. Nanny, not a parent. 2 years old, was refusing to wear her hat. It was hot. I told her if she didn't put her hat on she would have to wait in the car. She started walking away from me. "Where are you going, car?" Not me, but my dad teaching the nephew. He hated smiling, so in pictures my dad would tell him to say whiskey. When he tried cheese it wasn't the same. Anyway, at school the principal was taking a picture of the class and tells everyone to say cheese. My nephew very loudly says whiskey. I tried the whole have your kids quote chores for pay and bid against one another. It's supposed to teach them about working for their money and not expecting handouts like an allowance. It turned into every time I asked them to do something I could, "How much will you pay me, Dad?" My parents had very clear lines about these are your chores and you do them because you are a part of the family, and these are things we are willing to pay you to do because they are either horrific or something we'd be willing to pay a professional to do. Hence that summer I got paid like $300 to clean up all that pigeon shit in the barn. My aunt and uncle were trying to teach my cousin manners and wanted him to address people as MR and MRS. They used each other as examples and consequently were known as Mr. Iannucci for 2 months. One of the funniest moments of my life was hearing my uncle describe how in the middle of the night instead of dad he started hearing MR Iannucci. Cracks me up every time. Told my children they should always have a good reason for what they want to do as a way to curb impulsive behavior. I'm hearing about all the reasons constantly. Playing carnival fair games is a waste of money. My son wanted to spend his $20 to win a Pikachu stuffed animal from his allowance that he saved up. We told him he would be wasting his money and he would not win. He spent $15 and won the biggest prize. Not a parent, but when I was around 12, my father suspected that I stayed up late playing video games, even though I didn't. One night he went into my room and told me that I shouldn't play my Game Boy Advance past bedtime because I needed to rest. That's when I realized I could play my Game Boy Advance past bedtime, and I've suffered from insomnia since then. I've been teaching my kids that life isn't always fair. The tantrums when one is invited to a birthday party have been too much. It's been helping some. Then I was playing tic-tac-toe with my youngest. She covered up the column she wanted to use to win. When I told her that cheating isn't fair and I didn't want to play if she was going to cheat, she reminded me, life isn't fair. Mama. Touche. Kiddo. My parents did the thing where they gave 4-year-old me a sip of Budweiser under the impression that I could say that it was yucky and then turn it into some lesson about not drinking mommy and daddy drinks. Or whatever. I instead took a sip and said can I have one? The lesson that beer is good has lasted to adulthood. Not a parent. But my in-laws love telling this story about my fiance. He was resistant to potty training. And they eventually got him to start using the potty by telling him that he had to be out of pull-ups before a family trip to Disney World. Because Mickey Mouse only sees big boys and girls. And also, who wants to lug a diaper bag around Disney? Anyway. It went great. They had a great trip. And the day after they got back, he took a sheet in the living room. When asked, he said, I don't gotta use the potty cause I already saw Mickey Mouse. They very firmly told him that if he was old enough to use logic, he was far too old for diapers. And that was the end of that. My parents tried to start a chore payment system around the house. There was a list of chores and then payment for them. Clean guest bathroom, $1.50. First, I just kept using that bathroom. So it needed cleaned daily. Basically got paid to poop. They stopped that after the first week. Next, I realized it didn't say WHO had to do the cleaning. I'd pay the neighborhood kids to do it instead. I'd give them $1 to clean the bathroom and pocket the $50. I did that one for like 3 weeks before the other parents found out and I got yelled at. Taught them to read early. My son could read by age 4. And my daughter by age 3. This leads to some unwanted conversations as they will read things over your shoulder when you aren't expecting it. Or even just signs on the road. You're going too fast. Daddy. It says 55 miles per hour and you're going 70. My sister's middle child is a rule enforcer who will chew out her parents when they do something wrong, like speed, and will tattle to the other parent if she thinks it's big enough the cop pulled them over. As the kid and not the dad, when I was 11 my father caught me smoking. As a punishment he made me finish the whole pack. I hated my first cigarette and had no intention of ever smoking again. But after smoking that pack I would try to hang out with the older kids and smoke with them because after all, my punishment wasn't as bad as the usual hoopin' and they found me funny to have around. I smoked until I was 37 or so. Yeah. My dad was an idiot and a jackass. Not a parent, but one time my parents grounded us from using their dishes because we never washed them. They said from now on we had to buy our own paper dishes and plastic cups utensils. I went that day to the dollar store and stocked up. Come dinner time none of my siblings had. I sold them all plates utensils at a huge markup. This went on for several days as my lazy siblings kept putting off going to the store. Best punishment ever. That he could hang out with people I didn't like. But that it was because I trusted him to stay true to who he was. His friends could act a certain way. But he could recognize that to be someone's friend didn't mean he needed to follow their behaviors. Sounded good and accepting in my head. Till he hung out with friends who he got in trouble with at school for weed. And whether you like weed or hate it, think it should be legal or not, it's still illegal on school grounds and he got expelled. Guess he didn't heed my lesson. Or maybe it was just a bad message. Now I tell him to avoid people who don't care about his best interests. Be friendly. Don't be friends. My wife tried to explain the concept of heaven to our 5-year-old after great grandpa passed. My daughter did not believe 1 ounce of it. She responded, "You're making that up, mommy. You can't be in heaven and a cemetery at the same time." When my daughter was 10, she wanted to try out for a community theater version of Beauty and the Beast. She got nervous though, and almost backed out. Because she was so sure she wasn't going to make it. My husband, who did some acting in high school, stepped in and said that he would also audition. Even though he knew he was never going to make it. He wanted to demonstrate to her that it's okay to audition for something that you don't think you're going to make. She ended up not only just making it, but she got the part of Chip. My husband got the part of Morris, Belle's father. He didn't even want to be in a goddamn play. My mother is a teacher and she once taught her class that if a bad guy is following you in a car, you should turn around and run back the way you came because it will take longer for the car to turn around to catch up and you have a better chance of escaping. A few days later one of her students ran away from school, so she got in her car and drove around looking for him. You can see where this is going. She caught up and called out the window. Common name. You need to come back to school with me right now. He looked at her, gave a sheet-eating grin, and ran back the way he'd come. She was cursing herself as she tried to turn the car around to follow.